everybody, my name is Kaya Savas. Welcome to a very special conversation that we're doing here at Film.Music.Media. If you are a fan of soundtracks, of archival releases from the specialty labels, then you have seen that The Rock, composed by Nick Glennie-Smith, Hans Zimmer, and Harry Gregson-Williams, was just released from Intrada, and we're the guys that kind of helped put it together. So for this special conversation, we're just going to talk about how that happened and who we are and what we did with the release. And I think this will be a fun way to just look at, getting an album produced, an archival album produced, and hopefully give you a little glimpse into how we approached it. And so I'm joined with my good friends Stéphane Humez and Maxime Marion, coming to you live from France. Okay, guys, how you doing?
Hi, Kaya.
Hey, Kaya.
Fine.
All good, all good.
So I think the first thing we should talk about is how we all know each other, because we're kind of a ragtag team of friends here that have we've known each other for years, kind of online. Stéphane and I have been talking pretty much every day, I think, for the past 20 years. I don't even know when we started talking.
2006 actually.
At the same year, it started
17 years.
for the same for all of us.
Yeah.
2006 seems the year.
So when Facebook was kind of becoming a thing, we all were on the hanszimmer.com forum, which if anybody doesn't know, the hans-zimmer.com, that kind of was a fan site that Stéphane was a big part of and kind of maintains and runs the site, has become pretty much the official site that Hans has kind of dubbed as like, this is Stéphane has kind of built an entire library and archives over there of all the details of all the people who've worked, on a lot of Hans's releases, kind of showcasing everyone's work. And our love for Hans's music is what brought us together. And, fast forward now, and we're helping produce The Rock, which is amazing.
Yeah.
But how did Maxime and Max and Stéphane, how did you guys, it was all online too? Did you guys know each other in person before? Like, how did you guys meet? I don't know that story.
Same as you, actually. Same as you.
Yeah.
It was online, and actually we only first met in the flesh in 2014, like when we first when we did the Hans shows, the first shows when Hans trusted
Revealed.
us.
Yeah.
Yeah, Hans
Revealed.
revealed.
We made a documentary about it back then, and I think that's we've talked together, Stéphane, for like 7 or 8 years.
Yeah,
and finally
prior to
met in London.
Yeah.
to do that project together.
You guys, you filmed that
great memories,
right? Yeah.
And I met Stéphane and Hans Zimmer on the same day. I mean, for real.
Yeah. It was a package deal, just
Yeah.
And I think Stéphane and I have only met when you came to DC. I remember one time, like when you were
2010 actually.
You're traveling with school or something. You came to Georgetown, right?
Absolutely.
To Georgetown, and you're like, "Hey, I'm in DC." I was like, "I'll come get you," and I took you to my house in Maryland. Right over the border.
Yeah,
and you like, give me your iPod with all your collection.
Yeah.
And then we met again when you flew out for the rehearsals. We went to the 2017 Hans Zimmer live rehearsals together, and then I filmed my kind of version of a documentary, which was just filming fly on the wall footage for 2 weeks. And then I think we met again when Sarah and I were on our honeymoon in Paris, and you met us for dinner that one time.
Exactly.
Yeah. But so we've all met very recently. I mean, we kind of only know each other online. So that's how we all came to be. We're all huge fans of Hans. Hans's music has put us kind of on our tracks, kind of in our passions and what we love and everything, and that's what made it brought us together. And we also have the same mutual love for The Rock. So
Definitely.
for me, I was 9. I'm 36 now. I was 9 years old when it came out, and that was the first R-rated movie I ever saw. And that was like the movie that I was like, whoa, what is this? Like, my little child brain was having a hard time comprehending like this amazing epic music and these shots, these Michael Bay shots, and the way it was edited. And I remember having the cassette in my Sony Walkman, and I was playing it nonstop, like on a loop. It was my thing. But when did you guys see The Rock? Was it when it first came out?
Yeah. At the same time as you in 1996 when it came out. I watched it back then and was completely hooked from the first minute of it, and I loved every bit of the film and of the score, of course, because I was already quite I wouldn't say interested in film music, but I was always aware that sometimes there were some very cool cues in films, and the rock really made me want to buy the album. Then a few weeks later, I ended up finding this wonderful artifact
There it is.
from the past,
The
and
OST.
straight from 1996. And yeah, it really ignited something, a real interest and love for film music, and I would say even more a real interest in music, because back then for me music was just, you know, casually watching MTV but not really getting interested in pop music. And the rock, among others, a few other scores, really got me into film music. And I know we are not alone with that, because I've read many boards, film music boards on the internet, and there are so many people who discovered film music through the rock.
It was very, Stéphane, did you see it in that first year when it came out, or did you discover it later?
Actually, no, I saw it a few years later, because back then I was like 9, 10 when the film came out. I mean, we are the same age, so it's not exactly the kind of movies we were going to see, you know. And so it was mostly on TV. And but The Rock, I think I knew the score before the film, actually, because I mean the music was used everywhere in
every trailer.
like shows, trailers, and stuff. I mean, it was kind of popular.
In Pirates of the Caribbean.
Yeah, exactly. But the thing is, I didn't know the names, you know, who wrote that. I didn't really care who the composers were. I mean, I loved the music. And same when I finally got, you know, soundtracks for Gladiator and stuff after that, you know. I mean, Hans Zimmer was just like a name on a front cover, you know.
Yeah, exactly.
I didn't know who he was, and I was not very interested in that, but I loved the music. And it only happened many years later that I was like, okay, so let's find out who that Hans Zimmer is. You know,
it's the same. I was like, oh, these all have the same names, and it wasn't just Hans, because I remember really looking like John's work after Face Off. That was, you know, same time, and Harry was kind of building his career too. So that was, you know, it was like, oh, these names that are I recognize. I'm like, oh, these are all the stuff that I like, and like, who are these people? Like, you know, so, and that's kind of what triggered, because, you know, I used to watch the behind the scenes a lot on DVDs and stuff. That was DVDs were just coming out in 97, 98. Like, it was still, I think I had to wait a while to afford a DVD player. My family, you know, there's like $1,000 when they first came out. So it's like, but yeah, it was that soundtrack that put me on the filmmaking path, and that made me, it didn't put me onto music. It was weird. I didn't want to be a composer, but it was like something about the visuals and the way, and it's funny, I tell all my film professors and everything, like, oh, was it, you know, was it Kurosawa? Was it Leone? I was like, no, it was Michael Bay that got me, you know, and, you know, and it's funny, you go back, I listened to the commentary track for the Liners from the original Laserdisc, and he talks about how he made sure it engaged for younger viewers. Like it was a conscious thing for him. Like the chase scene was never supposed to be in there. That was an after thing. It was like, oh, nothing's happening for so long, we should put some little action piece, you know, to kind of keep people interested or keep younger viewers interested in something like that, because it's a tense drama of a film, but of course it has the most spectacular action scenes as well. But and yeah, as Max mentioned, it, so many people have the same thing. A lot of people I've reading online, like, oh, this is the first kind of score that hooked my ears. Is, you know, it's, and it was such a unique score because it came kind of halfway through the decade of this kind of 90s action, you know, anthem scoring that kind of probably started, I would say, with Terminator 2 maybe, and then kind of Speed, and kind of, you know, this kind of power, you know, anthem theme that then evolved into Bruckheimer and Bay, and, you know, Simon West, Con Air, all these, you know, these movies that was coming out, just Tony Scott, you know, all these amazing filmmakers and talent just came and just created a genre of its own, and in a style that kind of just changed, I think, filmmaking and music for sure. And Max, because you're an animator, I mean, you're an engineer, sound engineer, like you, was film music set you on that path of creative, you know, your creative path as well?
Well, film music had a huge impact on what happened to be my career. It started, there were two things. I think there was film music on the side, and on the other side was stop motion animation, stop motion short films. And back then was mostly short films, because making a full feature stop motion film was just completely crazy, but it happened a few years later. But film music had it was very important to me. And I think the way things are built from a drama point of view in film music really had me very interested how you build a story. The way you compose and the way you direct are linked in a way. And I thought it was, yeah, it probably started something in me listening to this soundtrack and many more the years that followed.
Yeah, I always compare it to, like, because especially the 90s, those action scores, it's like I always say you put your hand in the snow and then you take your hand out and it's like, oh, you can tell there was a hand there. You know what the imprint is. So the score kind of is like the skeleton, kind of the emotional structure and when you're listening as a child, you're kind of you're that drama that you talked about, the dramatic structure, the build, the scenes are in your head, and since especially Hans's music, it's so kind of, it's obviously was used in trailers and temp music, like it's so universal. It's not really, even though it was composed specifically for certain movies and he composes them for those movies, they have a life of their own outside, and you can like imprint your imagination, I think, onto his music. And that's why I think his music inspires, not just us but so many other people. So I think it's like something about that, the way he approaches it.
Yeah, and I think there was a very specific sound in the mid-90s that really got me hooked. I remember back then that I loved the trailer music from the Lost World, and actually it was music from Backdraft. And I loved the music from the trailer from Independence Day, and like the year after I discovered that it was actually the music from Crimson Tide. Then every time I loved those big themes, it always ended up being music by Hans Zimmer, which was
same for like Pearl Harbor, like it was Thin Red Line in one of the first Pearl Harbor trailers. And that's how actually I think I discovered Thin Red Line in the first place. Like, okay, this music is good. Oh, it's Thin Red Line. So trailers had a bigger impact than now. I mean,
I think trailers go through they go through their little we had the Brahm phase, we had, which Hans helped to do the Brahm phase, and now we're in this weird song phase where it's a pop song, slow version, trailer version of a pop song, and so it's interesting because it was back then, it was just like you had Don LaFontaine doing In a World, and then you have, which is another trailer to mention for me, was Braveheart used Speed, Mark Mancina's Speed, and
really,
this one, go back and watch that original Braveheart trailer. It's crazy. It's like the entering the airport track, and I'm like, it works perfectly here, but it's like this is a Jan de Bont action film in LA, but it works for Scottish epic here. But so a shout out to soundtrack.net. That was like, I think, the website that would I like list like what trailer music was in each or what score was in each thing. So you'd go, because back then we didn't have what we have today where you can just find every answer online, and it was like a struggle to find these answers, like what is this, so but let's move to so we talked about The Rock, we talked about why we love it. Let's talk about how this project came up, because I've been working we've all been kind of friends of Hans and Steve and Nick and Harry, and I've built up relationships just for doing what I do here with Film.Music.Media, and Stéphane has built close relationships doing with Hans, HansZimmer.com, and being close with Hans and everybody. And so Stéphane, how did this happen? Like
I mean, you're like, how did I end up there?
Like
people don't know me. Who am I? Who am I to be legitimate enough to produce an album? I mean, where did it start? I mean, the start is really like, it's Hans' trust, because I mean, it never wanted. I mean, there has been expanded scores of his in the past. I mean, La La Land did, Days of Thunder, Broken Arrow. And I mean, the labels don't want to do stuff behind composers' backs, So they want to have the composers on board. But someone like Hans can be like sometimes difficult to, decipher in his behavior, because they don't know, like, if he's okay, if he's not okay with it. Like it's always like you keep asking, and so they like needed someone who can decipher Hans. So I've known him for a very long time. I think he has trusted me. Like, I mean, as Maxime said, we did documentary about him, and we didn't meet him before that. He didn't
Right.
like really know us. I've known him on social media and stuff since like 15 years. And just one day he's like, okay, just bring a camera and just film whatever you want on
Yeah.
our shows. And so the trust started that way. But releasing his music was always something I wanted to do, or push him, to do. And for many years, I've tried to talk to him about, yeah, you should do that. This score should be expanded. The soundtrack was not good enough. We can do better. And
Yeah.
so we got the opportunity through Dan Goldwasser to work on stuff like for Quartet Records for Drop Zone, and we got Hans to say yes about that one.
Hmm.
And last year we worked on The Ring and The Weatherman with La La Land Records.
Yeah.
And the thing is, Intrada Records nowadays is the label that can work on Disney owned stuff,
Yeah, they have a good
So
relationship with Disney, and
yeah,
they've built a trust with Disney that that Disney trusts them for sure. Yeah.
exactly. So, but
Hollywood Pictures and Touchstone Pictures and many more are Disney
yeah,
actually.
Buena
Yes.
Vista, all that
Yeah.
stuff. And we didn't know actually. I mean, I was not in touch with Intrada, so I didn't know if they had any interest in releasing anything from Hans. So, in my mind was like, okay, probably it's not like right up their alley. So maybe, but actually they contacted me, because of the work we did on with La La Land Records.
Yeah.
MV from La La Land told them, okay, you want to do something from Hans, go see Stefan,
Yeah.
so yeah, so they contacted me and they were like, oh, we want to do some work for some scores from Hans, but we've been trying for years, but it's hard to get an answer or to get things moving. So how did you manage? So could you please like help us? And then they mentioned doing the rock, and just like I'm like, okay, just let me talk to Hans, let me talk to Nick Glennie-Smith, because we know Hans, but we've known Nick for many years.
Yeah, Nick is great.
Maxime, you too. So I was like, okay, just give me a couple of days. I'm gonna just ask them if they're okay with the ID, and like right away, both were like, okay, sure, do it.
Sure, yeah. This
So
movie that we have no memory of, yeah, go for it.
And
yeah, I
Stefan,
mean,
may I add that in a way, I mean, among all those years, you've always been trusty or very. There was a lot of loyalty from you to the work of all the people that. I mean, there's Hans, but also people at
yeah,
remote control, and you've been always honestly interested in all those people's work and a true love for their work and the film music they produce. And you've not been there for money or for fame. You've always tried to find a way to make the best work possible, to always that everything be about the quality and being honest and true to the original works. And I think
yeah,
it pays off in a way, because you're a trusty collaborator when it comes to how to produce an album and everything. There's always a will to make the best work possible. And I
yeah,
think I think maybe if Hans trusts you, it's also because of that. I might be wrong, but I think you've
yeah. I
always
think
been
so.
very loyal to his work, and I think that
He's
maybe
just
that
celebrating,
explains.
yeah, celebrating everybody who works. I mean, HansZimmer.com is like an encyclopedia of everybody who's worked. So, most people don't get, any recognition, part of the music team and stuff like that. And especially when I was writing reviews back in the day, I stopped writing reviews for various reasons, but I would always, call out the additional music. And I just interviewed Steph Economo, and she's like, you've always mentioned, on Harry scores, like, oh, Steph worked on this, and thank you
Mm,
for that. And I've heard that, I've seen, when I moved to LA, all these composers were just either assistants or interns or just getting started, and now they have their own careers. And it's to see after the past decade, and you want to showcase talent that usually doesn't get called out. It gets overshadowed over the structure of the business, or just, especially within our film music community, which is a very nice, small, fun place with, people who really just are so passionate about all of this. You know, the general public is not watching this interview right now. If you're watching this interview, you are probably, you know, a film music aficionado and you enjoyed The Rock or you enjoy Film Music Media or anything like that. So it's yeah, it's I think it's important to that's how we all, I think, all operate. We just want to showcase other people's work and present it in the way it's supposed to be presented, which is what I think this album allowed us to do for The Rock, because this is our favorite score, our favorite, you know, movie, one of our favorites. And the original album is fantastic. I love it, but it, you know, it's kind of just little, you know, pieces here that kind of give you kind of a feel of the movie and the what we have here. So let's talk about the presentation of the album. Stéphane, what did you want this? I mean, we have kind of the film presentation of it, the, you know, complete version of what you hear in kind of the movie in chronological order. Why do you think that was the best presentation, and how did you kind of put these tracks together and make sure everything was as it should be?
Yeah, actually, I think, I mean, I prefer chronological presentation because it tells the story of the movie. So, I mean, there are two schools. I mean, some people are like, you need to really, you know, have a listening experience. Some are more like, you need to have the chronological thing. But I think it also depends on the score, on the structure of the score in the movie, you know. So some, you know, some scores are like, you know, you have the same cue or the same music happening all the time, so it would be better, like we did with The Weatherman, for instance, you know, to have the score more like feeling like an album more than the score as in the movie.
Because
But
it
I
was
mean,
written that way. It was very written differently. It was written more like a jam session, like a band doing an album.
Yeah, exactly. But The Rock is very much written to picture, so it made more sense to have it like it's happening in the movie, even if it's a little bit different, because in the movie you have lots of cuts and some editing, but so it's very much the score as written for the movie,
Right.
but plus some very cool additional extras and alternates and stuff.
Yeah.
So yeah, when we got clearance to do it, the thing which was important was to get the material, basically.
Yeah,
So
that's the
how would
important
you
part.
do that? So you can have the studio. I mean, the ideal thing is to have like what the studio has, but for big studios like Disney, you know, it can take a lot of time. It can be very complicated to pull stuff out of from their vaults, you know.
Yeah.
So the idea to get stuff was to contact the music editing team, because editors usually first have a good idea of the structure of the score because they edited it, and usually they keep a lot of stuff. So it was my first thing was to contact Bob Badamy and John Finklea, you know, who worked on editing the score, and they were very helpful with that. And John sent a lot of stuff, and to contact Hans and his studio, basically, you know, to see what they had in their vaults, you know, and I can thank many people there who helped us. I mean, Jacob, Jessica, and all the people at Remote Control, and so who took time to get the tapes, all those old tapes. They they probably spent hours digitizing the whole thing.
Just finding them somewhere.
Digitizing, sorting, I think, because they had all the files with the name of the tape and everything written down, so they had to manually you know, type every name of every cue from each tape. I think that was a very crazy job, honestly.
Yeah, I mean, thank you to the RCP team, and thank for Steve Koski to putting us in touch with everybody there and working with this, because without the RCP team, this would not have happened. Like, you know, they
on not as good. It would have happened, but not as good. I think.
Not as good.
Most of the additional material, I mean, not what is featured in the main program, all the bonus tracks,
the extras,
the extras came from Remote Control, because the John Finklea sent us, I'd say, mostly the score as it's featured in the movie, but there were no alternate versions or anything. But I think most of the bonus material, the extras, came from what we found in the middle of those the digitized tape content.
All those amazing alternates of the chase, which are fantastic. I mean, to discover those, that was like a real treasure, like to hear those. And because we all know now that was one of the most difficult tracks to get done, to get approved. It was the last piece of music to get approved. And you know, and I remember when I was talking to Nick for the liner notes, and he's like, "Oh yes, I remember we had a session on Memorial Day," and I was like, "Memorial Day? That's the end of May." He's like, "Yeah," and I was like, "The movie came out June 6th or 7th." He's like, "Yeah," and I was like, "What, in '96?" And then when I talked to Harry, you discover like, oh yeah, nonlinear editing became such a big thing at that point, and for them it was difficult because you'd have these cuts. Like today, composers are used to it, like having a cut change overnight, or you know, within a few hours you get a new cut. You have to conform, you know, to whatever the new picture edit is. But at the time, that was such a, you know, the technology was building, and there wasn't a thing. So you'd go to bed, wake up, and there'd be a new cut for you to work on. And Harry's like, "What? How did this happen?" You know, like. So it was a changing time for that. So we have the presentation now that, I mean, yeah, as Stéphane said, it was written for the film. But so Max, talk about your process now. So after Stéphane kind of assembled everything, or sent you everything, what did you do when you got those tracks? What all the material from RCP and all the you know, the material to work with, and what is your mastering process? How do you go through that?
Well, when it comes to the mastering, you know, I see it as when you get an old black and white photo, and you know, you send it to a photo engineer, you know, and what does he do? He removes the dust and scratches, and he adds brightness and contrast, and you know, to really update the picture. And it was pretty much that job that I wanted to do with the score. First, I wanted to try some kind of an audio profile for the album. Modern technology allows to you know, to play around with the sound a little bit, but at the same time I wanted to stay true to the original intention of the composers, of course, but also of the music mixer, Alan Meyerson, who you know. So I'm trying to update the sound, and maybe recordings from back then had less bass in the recording. Nowadays it's really bass heavy mixes that you get, so I try to find the right balance. That's something, that audio profile, you apply it to the files when the album is ready, but it's a process that is that lasts for all the process, the editing and process. But getting each file, I worked pretty much chronological. And for example, I denoised tracks, and I remember that the opening titles had a lot of hiss, but only on the left channel. So I tried to remove hiss, and I tried to remove clicks and crackle. I think the track called Aftermath, that comes just after the seals get all killed, and that's Ed Harris closes the eyes of the dead soldier. There's that beautiful track, I think it's Harry Gregson-Williams.
Yes, it's one of Harry's.
We got on both recordings, both sources we had some crackle in the middle of the track, and I tried to fix it. And I think the most difficult task I had on this project was with the chase demo, the second demo, because we had, I think, you know, the tapes from remote control, they were 27 years old when they digitized them, so probably that the tapes suffered a little bit.
Some deterioration.
And we had near the end of the track, near the 6th minute or so, we had like very big sound issue, like, you know, really horrible, and louder at some times, and we sent the original mix I did, but without removing that sound, to Intrada, and they said, well, you know, that's old material, so maybe we'll add a disclaimer for for the listeners, so that they know
Yeah.
that we didn't get the best, most modern recording. You know, it's from the past, and that
And
kind of
demos,
things.
yeah.
Yeah, things happen. And Stefan asked me, "Do you think you can do something about that one?" And then I spent, I think, one day or two just sound editing bit after bit of
Yeah.
that track, so that to remove. So now it's not perfect, but I will not send you the original one, but let me tell you that it was really horrible. And yeah, that was very weird in the beginning, because I was afraid that the listeners would think we did a bad job, and
Right. Yeah.
really wanted to fix that cue. And because most of the recording we got were stereo mix downs, so we didn't have multi-track with the strings, the brass, and everything
All the
separate.
stems, yeah.
Yeah, the bass and synthesizers and everything. So if you have a sound problem, you have to fix it on the old track. You cannot just identify where it does come from and just slightly adjust it. You have to do it on the final product, which is pretty difficult. But I also loved, in the middle of those stereo mixdowns, we found something really cool. That was the recording of the electric guitar played by Bob Daspit for 1M2, which is a naval weapons depot. And that's an incredible track. And we got the solo recording of the guitar, the original one, that was used. It's pretty, very, very subtle in the mix, in the film mix and album mix. But there are many segments of the guitar that are just absolutely awesome. And I remember, because we had solo recording, a little bit of a demo in the background, but the sound was, well, the guitar was great, but we had some a bit of the demo in the background, so it didn't sound as it was not mixed. So I put it on top of the original of
the final mix. Yes,
exactly. And I adjusted it and I remember sending it to Stefan, like, what do you think about it? And Stefan was like, bonus track. It's a great surprise. And when it's pretty much the first score I really loved, so having that kind of material, I felt really privileged. And at the same time, it's a little bit, it all comes full circle. So it was wonderful experience. And then we had to cut the album together, and we decided to stay quite true to the original album edits. And because for me, the way we discovered, we all discovered the music on that CD back then, or maybe you discover it on streaming, but the way it was built, the way it was put together, has some kind of a meaning, and it's important, I think, for the people who knew the soundtrack from back then. And we tried, when it was possible, when it was chronological, we tried to keep the same kind of edits. And I think that very big track at the end, the final attack track, the 16 minutes long track,
my favorite.
Tried to one of my favorites as well. The end is just wonderful. We tried to keep the same edits, because for me it was part of the way the music was built, because maybe it was, for some recording reasons, they recorded 4 minutes,
part 1, part 2, part 3, part 4.
Exactly. But in the end, it tells a story when you put it together. And I thought it was much more interesting to have that 16 minutes climax, very powerful one, instead of cutting it and having silence and just killing the momentum of the music.
Yes, I agree with that completely. Because like that, I always I love albums, I love CD albums, but like when you fall in love with the music in the film, you're watching the story unfold. And I think to have that, just the entire album, but that 16-minute track, having that kind of final act, that the whole climax, as I mean, that's like that's a track, and that's a track for sure. Like, it just, like, you feel the weight of everything, and the power of the edit, the power of everything. I mean, and just the way it resolves, and it's yeah, I mean that it's storytelling. This is musical storytelling. So I know some people will be like, oh, to have each track separate, but like, no, this is how it was designed. This is how it was meant to be, experienced. So, and I think that's amazing that we were able to do that. And I mean, you guys did an amazing job. I mean, Max, you made that soundtrack sound perfect. So like you made everything perfect. I mean, it's just like, it's beautiful. I'm listening to it in my car, through my CarPlay, lossless and everything. And it's just like, and then I have my CD or my spatial audio here, but it's just
yeah, we listened to it actually like a million times, to make sure there was not any problem left, or even just as Max said, crack, sometimes just even small things. And we were like, we listened to it like, maybe 200 times. And
I know you sent it to me and you're like, any notes? I was like, I don't know. I've just been listening. This is great. I've just been listening to it like for the past month. I was like, oh, I'm supposed to take notes. Yeah. Did I hear anything?
But for example, just one example, those drums, those mid-90s Media Ventures drums.
Yeah.
That's so many people are, for them it's Hans drums, when actually it's Nick Glennie-Smith who created them. And these are drum samples from the 90s. So sometimes the drum itself has a little bit of hiss when it's played. So you have hiss for like, you have the drum like, and then you have for the same amount of time, and during the length of the sample, you have a little bit of hiss. And on quieter tracks, you can actually notice that sometimes you have hiss for 2 seconds and then it goes away. So I tried also on the quieter tracks. I think on Hummel's Speech, I don't remember if it's 2M6 or something like that. 2M6A maybe.
It's 2M5 actually. 2M5.
Sorry.
That's why we need Stéphane here. It's like Stéphane has everything is burned in that brain there.
Yeah, definitely. And I had to remove a little bit of that hiss because if you listen very loud, you might notice that you have hiss variations. And Stéphane mentioned the fact that we listened to it many times, but Stéphane also did something before we actually really started. Stéphane had an edit of the film he made himself, but with the sound effects removed, and he put the score on the pictures, and I think it was really helpful.
Score,
he made the isolated score for The Rock, and he sent it to me. We watched it very carefully, to understand how things are structured. So it was a very interesting process. At the same time, it's one of your favorite scores on top of one of your favorite movies, but just the music with the pictures. And it was really interesting because we also understood from the way it was written, the use of themes and everything. It's really interesting because you actually understand and you see how interwoven the score is with the pictures. Because sometimes, when you're listening to the score and then you have those choir, like, the choir from the scores from Hans from that era.
The vowel
chorus.
Vowel chorus, yeah. It's just A-E-I-O-U. It's just a male chorus going I-E-I-O-U,
And this sound, when it's used, when you're casually listening to it, it's there and it's part of the DNA of the score. But when you watch the pictures with it, you'll notice that every time you see those green pearls, of VX gas, it's actually their theme. Their
motif,
their motif. And then when you watch the film, every time you have them on screen, you have the choir, and you just notice how very, very subtly added on top of the drums and everything. And it's absolutely crazy the way they build it. And I know many people would say, well, they didn't have much time. It's a pretty rushed score, and actually, it's very well structured,
well thought out. And Nick, even Nick said to me, "He's like, no, it's a very well thought out score. Like you listen to it, it's like, oh, it's just a bombastic action score, but it's like the themes are so." And I think when all of us were just kind of dissecting it because I was realizing things because there was no like whose theme is what, like what's this going to, and we were kind of labeling like who's who, right? Like we were going through and I was like, Max, what do you think this is for? And you're like, well, this is that, blah blah, and then we're just like kind of going back and forth and saying because and it's just perfectly edited, the kind of tapestry, just a kind of a storytelling of just like And when you listen to the tracks, you can feel the edit of the picture because they're so tied to the edit of the movie. You know, it's, I guess the term would be Mickey Mousing. It's almost like a cartoon, you know, where it's like very closely to the motion of the camera, the motion of the cuts and everything. I mean, I was rewatching kind of the Mexican standoff at the end, kind of the and like the hits of the edits, like when the percussion comes before Hummel gets killed. You know, it's like everything is so perfect. And yeah, we've noticed all those themes. We noticed little touches, like, you know, I think when you know, Mason's going underneath the fire to go back in, we're hearing certain things that we never really noticed before, and like all these things. It was fascinating. It was like rediscovering. That's why I loved working with you guys on this. It was like rediscovering our favorite score like all over again.
I think Mason's theme, you know, the very gentle Scottish theme, is actually used many times, and in very different variations, like the Mason montage near the beginning of the album, of CD1. You can actually notice, and I think Stéphane noticed it first. He told us, well, actually, that's Mason's theme there. And I was like, are you kidding me? I never noticed it. And just listening, oh yeah, that's the melody. You're right. You know, really dark and brooding. And wow, that's also, and it's already there. And it's the moment where we are introduced to his
where he's walking out
music material, and it's really, really well built. And even secondary elements have their own themes, you know, like the rockets, or at least the danger of the gas, you know, you have that kind of theme, quite secondary because there are a lot of themes, but actually it has a meaning in this global experience, and it's incredibly, I think, I don't remember, I think Hans once mentioned there were 20 or so themes in the rock.
Yeah,
am I wrong, or I think we can count them, and it's not far from 20, definitely.
I don't think we don't have a final count, but I wouldn't be surprised. Like, it's just like, it was a lot of and it just calls back to that time of, like, that's why I think it's such a perfect 90s action score. It's not just like one big main theme, it's not just one big power anthem, it's just like, and it's also all three of their styles kind of merged together. That's why it's like, it's Nick, it's very much Nick's score, it's very much Nick's sound, but then you have Hans's kind of melodic structure a little bit, then you have the way Harry adds kind of texture and the way he builds action, and that you still hear in his music today, you know, even though that was so early in his career. It's like you're hearing their voices, and their musical voices kind of like, and it just merged together to be this like perfect, you know, like sound marriage of sound. I mean, it's that's why today I think it hopefully still holds up. I hope people listen to it, and, you know, it's not just like, oh, it's not just some popcorn flick, because I mean, it's a fun action movie, you know, but has this emotional depth to it. It has, you know, this weight that I miss from action movies. You know, movies today are so light and bright, and that's fun to have a nice, you know, fun action movie, you know, but like something like Con Air, which is very kind of, you know, even in the 90s, Con Air, something like that, the head doesn't, you know, it's not trying to go for like deep, but like there's some dark stuff here. Hummel, for me, is one of the most interesting kind of action movie villains, because he's not really, he's a bad guy. He's trying to do something good, just in the wrong way, and he pays the price for that, you know.
It's Hummel's tragedy, basically.
That's why we start with him. He's the first character we meet, and we follow his entire act. Like, you know, Sean Connery and Nicolas Cage are kind of just the vessels, and they never meet. Like, they have one scene each together. I think Mason has one scene with him, and Goodspeed has one scene at the end. Like, and even Ed Harris talks about it on the track, and the commentary track. He's like, yeah, we never met, and Ed wrote all the dialogue for his stuff with the consultant, the Marine consultant for the movie. So that's why it's so different than everything else. Feels very kind of Hollywood and kind of actiony, but his stuff is real, and like, he's serious, and that's what I think gives the movie its weight, and why the score carries that through. That's why I think the score is so unique, because it has the tragedy, as Stéphane said, it's kind of the arc of the tragedy, which doesn't happen today that much.
Yeah, definitely. And I think the main theme has this strength of, you know, I think you mentioned it in the liner notes, that actually you can flip it from the minor chords you hear in the beginning, that is a lot about tragedy and drama, and when you flip it to major chords, you have this very grand and
Heroic.
beautiful
Yeah.
heroic
Yeah.
theme,
Yeah.
and it's interesting because it's exactly the same melody, but depending on the scene, it can just, you know, change emotion, and it's always very strong when they arrive in the tunnels and you have the theme
Yeah.
that kicks in. It's just, every time I'm listening to that part, it just gave me chills.
Goosebumps.
And
Yeah,
and at
just
the
yeah.
same time, near the end, when they bomb Alcatraz, and
Mhm.
with the fighting jets, and that version of the track is just, I don't know, I understand why so many people who are not necessarily into film music actually enjoy this soundtrack, or
Yeah.
at least back then. But I'm always surprised that people are that interested, because when you ask them, what do you know about film music, they will mention Star Wars, maybe The Lord of the Rings, Indiana Jones, and in the middle of that you have The Rock.
Yeah.
Big, it happens. It happened to me so often that people that have no connection to film music, really no interest in film music, that knew only the big names of film music, they always had The Rock
Yeah.
in a corner at home, because it became kind of a
Wait, just a
classic,
sec.
cult
We
classic.
lost Stefan.
Oh,
Yeah.
Stéphane, what
Your
happened?
trial has finally run out. They finally like pay up. There you
Sorry,
go.
sorry.
Oh, you're back.
I'm back.
Wonderful.
Back. All right, everybody, calm down. We got him. It's good.
Yeah.
But no, yeah, and I think it also helps cement Hans's sound too. I think Hans was already on a roll at that point, but like after that came kind of Gladiator and Pirates, which kind of had pieces of this a little bit kind of, and then it developed into his kind of what people fell in love with him for. I think 2000 onwards. I mean, Hans was already, you know, won an Oscar at that point. So, but I think in the terms, after Lion King kind of put him in the kind of general public eye, like, okay, this music, you know, everything that him and did with Lebo, and you know, that, and Nick worked on that too. So I mean, Nick has been part of Hans' team for you know, they're friends from back in London. So it's like Hans was in the back room of Nick and Richard Harvey's studio trying to put his stuff together. So they have, their relationship has, you know, cemented through, and Harry kind of got brought in as well through all that friendship, and through Richard and Nick, and you can feel the camaraderie too. It's like, I don't think it would have worked with just like a studio saying, you know, hey, had this composer come help, you know, this thing. The fact that they all
Yeah.
knew each other and they're all on the same page, and they kind of all come from the same world. That's why the sounds are so perfect, and the samples and everything, like the edit. I mean, it's just, I don't know, it's like a perfect storm that you can't
Yeah,
ever
yeah.
replicate.
They all have the same background. They all come from the UK, and
Yeah.
they all worked with Stanley Myers and stuff. So, I mean, yeah, if you want to have a team of three people working together, you better have those three. And
Yeah.
I will not like forget also the additional composers who worked on it,
Oh yeah,
like
yeah.
the late Stephen Michael Stern, who passed away
Yeah.
a few years ago, who worked on it, and even he had a voice. I mean, the very, uh, very slow cues, with some electronics, and like the on the album, the track Interrogation Quarter, which is very much Steven Stern,
Yeah.
and you had Don Harper who worked on it, and as well, who
Yeah,
conducted some
Don
of it.
worked on the chase, and you know, but Harry had, you know, that thing turned into a beast of its own. So the DNA there with
Yeah,
Don and Nick, and then Harry kind of coming in and
yeah.
finishing
Even
it off. Yeah.
even Russ Londo, who came, he was not part of Media Ventures and stuff, but at that time he had the same agent as Hans, and it was all hands on deck. They were like trying to find anyone who could help meet the
Right.
deadline. So, like I think he told me he worked on like for 2 weeks on the score, and actually one of his cues ended up in the final score. So, but
And what a cue.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, it's very cool
The
cue.
San
The
Francisco montage is one of my favorites from this new album,
Yeah.
because it was not featured on the previous one.
Right. Yeah.
yeah,
And that's what the beauty of
exactly.
this album is, that we get to see all those little details, and what's, you know, Steven's work was like kind of building those atmospheric kind of textures,
Yeah,
and you feel all the, like the connecting tissue of the score. And I think that's what sometimes gets, you know, it's missing from the original album presentations of most soundtracks, because, you know, and especially Hans Lef's release suites and stuff like that, which are great. I love them. They're perfect listening experiences. But this, to again, you guys mentioned creating isolated score tracks, like which I love doing as well. Like I did that one with Lone Ranger with Jeff's help, and I know Stéphane has already, you know, his the history of just, you know, he puts so much stuff on YouTube too. You find it because you really get to see like how it works, like with the picture. I mean, that's what it's meant for, and I think that's why we all fell in love with it. And none of us can write music ourselves or anything, but it's like, you know, we can't score a movie, but like we can talk about it and finesse about all the details and yeah, and here we are now. We have this beautiful 2-disc presentation out in the world. So it's just, you know, and we got to discover new things too. I mean, Max, I thought it was funny you didn't know there was any stop motion in the movie. You know, I was like,
no, I didn't know that. You know, I'm doing stop motion. I didn't. It's not that I didn't know. I didn't notice it for all those years.
all
You
those
had to
years.
tell me like 3 or 4 months ago. There's stop motion in The Rock. Now, are you kidding me?
So are you
There's
kidding?
stop motion in The Rock.
The whole underwater sequence, yeah, the Navy SEALs. I think, and yeah, you look back at it, I think they spent like $1 million or something doing it. That's almost crashed the film because Michael Bay wanted to use stop motion for the underwater sequence.
But it's, I mean, it's seamless, and
Yeah.
that's something that's absolutely wonderful, because when you think about today's CGI, sometimes we accept them, but
Yeah,
we
your
know
brain
they
just
are
knows. You're
fake,
like,
they
yeah,
are wrong
yeah.
in a way, and that part I never noticed. It was actually miniature dolls, you know, actually moving in a fake water environment, and
Yeah.
everything is about the movement and the light, and it's just crazy. That sequence for me is, I don't know.
Yeah.
It's such a surprise to discover that more than
And then
25 years later.
I know. I mean, because I remember when I think I first discovered it because they have that bonus feature on the Criterion of The Rock, and I was watching the behind the scenes. I'm like, what? Like, you know, you go back and you have to rewatch it. You're like, oh my God, like now you know, and you kind of can see the motion maybe a little stiff or something, but it's so flawless. Like it's done in only a few shots, you know, so it's not like you have enough time for your brain to like start picking up on like, oh, is this a miniature? Something looks off, but nothing looked off. And then it also, as this film in 96, CGI was, you know, Jurassic Park had already come out, but CGI was still very kind of coming up, unless they had ILM doing something. But like the jet sequence, like even then, like all the CGI that was used, I think the only thing that I've ever like popped out of my head, like, or kind of caught my eye, even as a young person, was the flames underneath the underneath the trolley, where you can tell they were hiding the hydraulics with some CGI flames, and I was like, that looks animated. But otherwise,
I think it's more like, you know, they take it's not animated. It's like they recorded flames and they added like a layer of
green
flames
screen,
on.
Yeah,
green screen of flames.
there's
a
one,
bit weird.
there's one
it's a
like
bit
the
off.
way the flame licks or something that looked almost not natural. I don't know, but it was like, but yeah, it could have been a plate. It could have been a background plate with and just, you know, composited in or something like that. But even the jets at the end, the jets were CGI, and it's like you can barely tell. Like it's the way it. And I think Michael Bay has always been great with that. I know the first Transformers, like that CGI is in the world. It's never like everything is. I mean, I think towards later those movies became full kind of almost animated films, but that first movie is just like they were filming stuff for real, and they were collapsing buses and then animating on top of that. So I think that's kind of goes back to these early stuff what he was doing, which was just the very early CGI.
For Bad Boys 2, they did that as well. They filmed, you know, the car that are crashing on the freeway. Actually, they are crashing for real, and they made a fake CGI Ferrari that drives in between the crashed cars, when actually today you would say, okay, it will cost less to drive with a real Ferrari in the middle of a you know, empty road, and then you just add crashing cars. They did the opposite, and because your eyes are caught by the crashing cars and not by the Ferrari driving, so it works wonderful. And I think that's the way you have to think about how to use CGI to make them actually work, and not catch your eyes and wonder, well, that's not true.
This movie would never it would never be made in the same way today. You would never have the, like, I think Michael Bay on that commentary was talking about how they were pretty much destroying San Francisco with that, with the like, and they're like, yeah, I don't know how we got away with that. Like, I think they were pretty like pissed off at us, like we were, because they were exploding, you know, those power lines and stuff, and like I remember he's like, I think he talked about like the blast, like kind of dust on some people's homes, like like just like but they had to go back and clean it up. But it's yeah, I mean, it's just pure practical action filmmaking at its best, and I think that's what we all fell in love with. And yeah, and I hope everyone does enjoy the score. I hope everyone, if you're a fan of it, I hope you can rediscover it. If you're new to it, I hope it takes you back to that time, and hope you go discover some other, great power anthem scores from the 90s, and from not just Hans, but Nick and Harry, but all these other great composers that were working in that time too. And it's very satisfying to have that out in the world. And doing the liner notes, with our last two releases, we did just full interviews, with Gore and Hans. And I'm a fan of just letting the composers speak, but Hans and Nick were on tour. It was very hard to pin them down. Also, this was such a fever dream for them. The memories, in their elder years are a bit like, what happened? What does that? But we were able to get a lot of great details, and Harry helped us, I think, piece together the chronological things of how things happened. And I just want to thank Nick and Hans and Harry for their help in making this happen.
I mean, that if there's one thing I want to add is I'm gonna thank Hans and Nick for the trust, basically, because honestly, doing that album, they let us do whatever we wanted. We had carte blanche. They were like, okay, we trust you.
We got
don't screw it up, of course.
no notes. There was no notes. There was never like, this is wrong. Like they saw everything was sent to them, and never was like, hold up. Nick made sure the notes were correct. Like, he didn't change my notes, but he was like, he made sure the facts were correct. And I appreciate him taking that time to help during, between hotel rooms, between cities. He was so busy, and we're on the different sides of the world, and it was we couldn't have done it without them. So
and big thanks to Roger Feigelson and Douglas Fake at Intrada, because basically they came to us and they didn't know us, so they had absolutely like no reason to trust us. And because they work with outside producers and mastering engineers and stuff, so and Douglas does them sometimes himself, but for that score they were like, I was like, okay, let us show you what we can do. If it's shit, if it's terrible, you can tell us, and we're gonna change completely. But they were like, I think they were happy with what we did, and we had only positive feedback from them, and so that was cool.
It was. We really just, you two specifically got just pretty much, nothing. There's like, let us know when it's done, and we'll get them everything approved. And I want to, Intrada was amazing with that. Intrada, and just, Frank also helping with the editing of the whole liner notes, and the whole team with the layout and all that stuff. They really supported us, and I'm glad we were able to do this with them. It was a fantastic, fun collaboration for sure.
Kay did very. I love the visuals in the book, the liner notes, because they absolutely to the spirit of the film. The visuals, all the different elements. I loved it because it felt like it was. Sometimes when you want to be a bit modern too much, you lose the spirit of the original. The original philosophy of the project, and it's 100% part of
If you hold up your original album and you hold up ours, I know a lot of people maybe go, oh, you just reused the same cover, but it's like, this cover is so perfect, you can't do a better, you can't do it better. Like, this is the iconic three of them here, that red kind of color palette, the red orange, and then that font, which of course, I forgot to mention, I didn't realize that. I think both Stéphane and I realized that I was using the font, or someone was using the font from like the Criterion, or it was like, oh, this is different than what the actual, we're just discovering all these details like that we never realized. Like, but to keep that, I think it's a beautiful album, and Intrada did such a wonderful job in helping produce it. So, but any other final? I think we've covered almost everything. Is there anything left that you guys want to mention? Anything?
No, I think we're good.
I
think we're good.
I think we covered it. Well, everybody, thank you if you've listened through all of this just to hear us nerd out over our love for The Rock. I appreciate you for sticking with us, and if you haven't grabbed it yet, please grab a copy and enjoy, and let us know what you think. We're always interested. We're not on all the forums and stuff, but we see what you guys are posting. We'll go take a look. If you have complaints, we don't care about them. But no. And we'll dive in and see what we can do next. We'll see, and and it's been great working with Hans on these past few releases, and now we have Max here and working on this one, and it's been such a dream, especially to work with you guys. I mean, you guys, I've known you guys for so long, and it was just so much fun to do it. So thanks.